Yeah.
Okay, and let's begin. Good evening and welcome to episode 6 of the Frontline Forum. I'm Guy McCardle from SOFREP.com. Normally at this time, I would introduce my co-host, Rad Radel, but Rad is off doing other things this evening, so we'll catch him next month. Tonight, our special guest will be former 2nd Battalion Ranger, entrepreneur, and author Dan Blakely. Dan is a co-author, along with fellow Ranger Tom Amenta, a fantastic book of interviews with and photographs of GWAT veterans called The 20-Year War. So go out and buy a copy today. You'll be glad you did. It is a great book. I've read all through it, seen all the pictures, wonderful photography, great interviews. And while you're at it, go check out SOFREP's bookstore. We have thousands of titles. You have access to all of them with one low monthly price. There's Dan and Tom's book. So SOFREP Book Club just now open. You want to check that out. And with all of that said, we have everybody here. We're ready to go. Dan Blakely, welcome to the forum.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's good to have you here. Could you talk a little bit about your military background? We'll start with that.
Yeah, I had quite an interesting journey initially joining the military. I was a military brat. My dad was in the Air Force for 21 years. We lived all over the world. And I would have told you growing up that I was never going to join the military.
Right.
Just experiencing, traveling, meeting new friends all the time, just having to constantly uproot and move somewhere new. I was just like, it's not for me. But when I was a sophomore in high school, we moved to California, which is where both my parents' family is from. And it was the absolute worst town you could possibly think of growing up in. Drugs, major problem within the high school. Teachers just didn't care. Just not the place you really want to be. For anybody who's knows the Marine Corps, it was right down the road in Yucca Valley, California. So it was desert town, not the prettiest place, especially in early 2000s.
Shout out to Yucca Valley. Not to interrupt here, Dan, but I don't know if you can see on your end or not. You can see me laughing. We have Rad in front of a rather large squirrel of some sort. That's well, welcome, Rad. I'd like to introduce you to Dan Blakely.
What's going on, Dan? Hi. What's up, SOFREP? Yes, that's a squirrel. The reason why I'm tardy to the meeting is because I was trying to get that to be a little bit bigger. I didn't know how to quite make it any bigger. So
couldn't make that squirrel behind you any longer.
Guy, brother, I hit join session and I have got squirrel.
Okay. Awesome. This will be like our most unique Frontline Forum ever.
Well, last time it said like SOFREP Book Club. I think there was like a SOFREP Book Club plug.
Now we have a large rodent. Dan was just telling us how wonderful it is in Yucca Valley, California, as a teenager, and how that led him down his future endeavors.
Yeah.
Right into the other deserts.
Yeah.
You got to think for deserts.
Others.
My man, yeah. So like you is it Marine Corps, right?
No, Army.
Okay.
So it was interesting. So again, crappy town. Needed to find my way out, and so I finally went up to my parents and was like, "Look, I know you guys aren't going to be able to afford college for me, and like, there's no way I'm going to go that route. So I've really been thinking about this. I'm going to join the military." And luckily, my parents were pretty supportive. But this was 2005 when I first talked to them about it. Height of the war, really. That's right around the time when the battle for Fallujah was happening. Like, it was heavily in the news. They were like, "Okay, you can join, but we don't want you to do anything dangerous." And I was 17 at the time, so I had to get my parents, blessing, their signature. So I went to the recruiter. I wasn't going to be a Marine because I lived too close to them. I wasn't going to join the Air Force because that's what my dad did, and I just didn't see myself living on a boat, so I wasn't going to do the Navy. So I walked into the Army recruiter's office and I said, what is an exciting job that I can do that isn't going to put me directly in, in war? And they were like, well, you could be a parachute rigger. That way you can jump out of airplanes. That's exciting, but you're probably not going to end up, actually going out and fighting at all. I was like, all right, perfect. So at that point, I got my parents to sign off. They were happy with it. And then when the day happened that I was, believe I had like 48 hours that I had to go to MEPS, and then I was, going to actually get on a plane to fly to Fort Benning to go to basic training. I sat down at the table, signed my paperwork to go, and he, this like lieutenant colonel, I think, or maybe a major, was sitting across from me, and I remember his face, and I remember everything about that moment. And he said, "Son, I don't know what to tell you, but parachute rigger is not available anymore." And I was like, "All right, well, that
Surprise,
sucks."
surprise.
I was like, "What about that other airborne job that the recruiter told me about?" He was like, "Airborne Ranger." I was like, "Yeah, I'll do that one."
I'll do that one. It rhymes with danger. Yeah.
So I had no idea. I mean, I knew a little bit about Rangers. I've seen Black Hawk Down, like I've seen, some of the war movies and stuff like that, but largely I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I just remember, after joining up, going through everything, I was too dumb to quit. I would like anytime I commit myself to something, I'm 100%, I'm going to do it. So, went through all the selection and stuff like that, finally got to 2nd Ranger Battalion. And I lied to my mom for like the first 4 years of my career. I just didn't tell her. Like every time I deployed, I just told her, I was like, oh yeah, we don't really do much. Like, I work out, play video games, watch
I
movies.
work out.
I don't do anything else. Like, no, don't worry about it. It wasn't until like my 5th and 6th deployment that I finally started, spilling the beans a little bit with her and telling her exactly what I was doing and what I had done.
How'd she take that?
A lot of shock. She knew a little bit, I think. She probably was starting to pick up a little bit about what I was doing. Social media wasn't anything really back then. And so it's not like she would have ever saw photos of anything. Anytime she came up to visit me, it was like I was going to her, to the hotel room or wherever they were at. Because again, they lived in California. I was stationed in Washington, so I wasn't gonna have them, come on post or anything. And so she just never had any exposure to any of it until I finally was like, all right, here's a video. And it was like a 75th Ranger Regiment, like hype recruiting video. And I was like, all right, here's a video. This is kind of what I do. And I showed that to her and she was like, are you serious? I was like, yeah.
Proud mom moment right there. Proud son moment.
Well, she's super thrilled about it now. She knows all about it. I've shared plenty of
Exactly.
stories with her, but yeah, it was interesting for a little bit. I think it took her probably a few days to reel from that, especially knowing that I was going to go back. Like that was probably after my 4th deployment, and then I had 2 more subsequent ones after that. So she probably had way more worry my final 2 deployments.
Yeah, because she knew what was knew what the deal was.
Yeah.
So you and I did an interview earlier on SOFREP that our viewers can go read that. And so I'll ask you about something that I talked about, or we discussed in the interview that I found kind of interesting. That would be your coronary condition. Are you willing to talk about that? Since that's,
Yeah.
you're already on the record for it.
I am multiple times. So I even covered a little bit in our book, The 20-Year War. It was probably one of the most difficult things that I went through. So I was probably 4 years, maybe 4.5 years into my career. I just got promoted to staff sergeant. I was on a path to really, seeing myself develop in the 75th Ranger Regiment, probably eventually, trying to go take the long walk, go over the fence, serve with the unit. I really had this idea of like what I wanted to do within special operations. And I was ready to, the next year re-enlist and do everything like that. And I was going through a school. I was probably one of the fastest people probably for sure within my platoon, but maybe even within my company. And I don't know, even broader than that. People called me a gazelle because I would just like outrun everybody.
Mm.
I was at a school on Fort Benning, Georgia, and we were just doing morning PT out on a run. And just out of nowhere, I get this stabbing pain in my chest, every beat of my heart. And it was something I even like felt the pain initially, was trying to push through it, trying to just like, oh, maybe it's like, growing pain or something like that. Maybe I don't know, ate spicy food. I don't know.
Mhm.
But it wasn't. I knew after a little bit, I was like, it's something wrong with my heart. Something's going on. And it was the first run I had ever fallen out of. It was the first time that I ever had to stop in the middle of a run and just be done. And I was going to ALC, the Advanced Leader course on Fort Benning. So we had cadre with us and everything. And one of them had to circle back and come back to me and be like, what is going on? And at this point, I'm like hunched over on the curb, like not sure what's about to happen. Luckily, every time you do PT, especially when you're doing like Army training, they have like a safety van that's nearby. So they threw me in that, took me to the hospital right away. Started going through a bunch of tests and everything over multiple days to figure out what was going on with me. And I found out I had a hole in my heart, which is not uncommon. Actually, it's very common that people are born with some sort of heart defect. But through the whole process, I finally, talked to the doc, and he's like, yours is getting worse because of the stress you're putting on your body. Because of everything you're going through, it's causing this issue. And so I basically was left with a decision. What's crazy about it, if you know David Goggins' story,
Yeah.
he basically had the exact same thing happen to him.
Mhm.
But they told him, you're not deploying anymore. You're not doing this anymore. Like, you're done. Whereas for me, when they escalated this to our, battalion surgeon and finally told him like, hey, this is what's going on with this guy. Is he deployable or not? They basically came back to me and said, you tell us what you want to do. So I had one more deployment coming up, and I was like, well, I'm definitely going to go on that deployment, because anybody who's served in special operations, or really just any combat unit, you're not going to prepare for something and not go, be sidelined.
Right.
If it's your choice, you're going to go. And so I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to at least go on this deployment. So I went, and at that time, me and my wife had been married just over 6 months. And so at this point, we're also talking about it, and I'm like, what do I do? I want to keep doing this, but I also don't want to die just because I have a failing heart, or I make this condition worse, or I can't do what I want to do because now I have to have some desk job or some bullshit that I don't want to do
Right.
within the Army. Like, I want to be able to do this. And so ultimately, went on that deployment. Deployment was also probably one of the roughest I've been on. Lost a really, really close friend to me. It was a shitty deployment. So between all of that mixed together, I was just like, you know what, this is probably the right decision. A lot of things are aligning to tell me that it's time. I probably need to step away. So I made the hard decision to do so.
It's gotta
You
be
ever look
tough.
back? Do you ever look back and think about any pain that you might have had while you were not realizing you had a hole in the heart, like prior? Like, do you ever think like, oh, I wonder if that's why that hurt, or anything like that? Or
Yeah, I have, especially because I still get these pains every once in a while. I get checked out regularly to make sure nothing's getting worse, which it's not. But I still get these, not as often anymore, but I can tell when I'm in heavy stress, I get these like really intense chest pains, and I was getting those leading up to that event. And then I think that was just the the camel, or the straw that broke the camel's back. It was like, that was it. Again, everybody called me the gazelle. I was the runner. I was at the front of the pack. I was going to run as hard as I could, of course. And I went from the front to sitting on the curb thinking I was going to die.
Yeah, that's gotta scare the hell out of you.
Oh yeah.
And I know with Goggins, he had surgery twice to repair the hole
He
in his
did.
heart. The first time it didn't take, and the second time, yeah.
And they offered that. My the heart surgeon that I talked to actually a few of them at the time. We were even talking about the procedure and what it would take, what's the recovery time, what's the risks, all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, I don't want to risk my life just for this. You know, I mean, I was young, I was 22 years old. I was like, I don't want to
Really?
end my
Yeah.
life right now.
But you probably had to ask, okay, what if I don't get the surgery? You know, you have to weigh the,
Yeah.
benefits versus potential bad outcomes.
Yeah, and that was ultimately it. He said, this is something that can repair itself over time, with basically backing off the stress and the extra strain you're putting on your heart. And that's ultimately why I made the decision to leave, was just because I needed to step away from the high op tempo and constant PT, working out, going on deployments, round clock training, all that kind of stuff. I had to step away from it.
So you did the Wolverine thing and healed yourself,
Yeah, as best as I could.
or at least took it easier.
Tried to as best as I could.
Fast forward a bunch of years to the 20-year war. Where did you get the idea for, or was that your idea? Was that Tom's idea? Somebody else maybe?
It was mostly my idea. So I got out of the military, active duty, in let's see, 2012. I decided to transfer into a guard unit for 2 more years because at this point I was technically still deployable. And if anybody knows, when you sign an Army contract, you don't sign actually for 4 years, you sign for 8 years. It's 4 years or whatever, however many years. It could be 3, 4, 5, 6 years. At this point, I only had 6 years serving, and I was like, I'm not going to get activated to get deployed again, my last 2 years, especially not with a guard unit. So I knew of one that one of my buddies was working at. This is actually where I met Tom Amenta, which I know we'll fast back forward and get back to Tom Amenta in a minute, but it's where I met him as well. And we were supposed to be starting up an infantry school here at Fort Bragg for the National Guard. Yeah, there we go. There's Tom.
He looks like he got punched in the face there
He always
when
looks
he
like
was when he was stealing that AK.
No, I'm not sure. He probably did get punched. It might have been knee though. He's a short guy, so yeah, so we were going through all that. We so met in the guard. And what was funny, going back to the medical thing, what was funny is when I was in the guard, I had to go through the same sort of process to see if I was deployable, because there was actually a rotation that was going to happen, training happening in Africa to stand up an OCS thing there. And when I went through all the medical with the guard medical, I can't remember what they were called, but like the pre-assessment people who check your health and all that kind of stuff, I gave them all of my medical things, and they were like, okay, yeah, no problem. And then I told them about my heart, and they were like, why are you in the guard right now? They're like, you shouldn't even be in the guard. Like, you're not deployable. You can't do anything. And I was like, okay. It was just funny, a completely different perspective from one medical unit to another. It was just interesting. But long story short, so I served in the guard for a few years. Simultaneously, I was going to school, going to App State, Appalachian State University. When I was going to school, when I was in the guard, other than that weekend, a month, and that 2 weeks a year, I did not associate with the military whatsoever. I did not try and become a veteran. I went to the VA, yeah, but that was it. I didn't wear anything, honestly, like even any shirt, nothing with an American flag on it, because I didn't want anybody to pick up that I was former military. I had the mentality that I came from, the one of the highest levels you can get, within special operations. Sure, there's like the next level, going to the unit and doing good, within the special mission units and stuff like that. But I was like, for my career where I was, that was the highest I could get at that point. And I was never going to allow somebody to like step into my life and be like, oh, how was it? What did you do here? What did you do there? Whatever. I just didn't have those conversations. So when I transitioned, I shut everything off. Fast forward to COVID, when everybody's shut down at home, sitting at home thinking, with their own thoughts, whatever it is. I really started reflecting on my past. I started reflecting on my service, reflecting on the things that I went through. Yes, I had friends that I kept up with here and there, but not that many. And I realized that I probably made one of the biggest mistakes in my life, and that was not keeping up with people, not transitioning effectively, not staying networked and connected to my friends and brothers and sisters I served with. And I was like, there's also all these stories, all these things that are coming out in the media. I've seen all the war movies and everything that were coming out from 2012 all the way to 2018. When I first got my first job, and when I started reflecting and thinking about this stuff a little bit, it was really 2020 though when I really leaned into it. And I was like, there's a lot of stories out there that I haven't heard. There's a lot of people that I haven't heard from. There's a lot of perspectives that I haven't heard. And one that I certainly haven't heard enough of is about people who are transitioning and the different types of transition that service members go through. And it was in that like thought process that I was like, we got to do something about that. Started reaching out to a lot of other veterans, people I served with, talking to them, just being like, what services are out there? What kind of platforms are out there? What kind of things can we do? And then right at this time is when Beau kind of jumps back into my life. So Beau Simmons is the photographer for the 20-year war.
We've got a picture of Beau. Let's see, Mark. Yeah, it's the black and white photograph of the gentleman leaning over the fence.
Yeah.
There he is.
And so him and I grew up together. Told you I ended up in Yucca Valley, and that's because that's where my grandparents lived. So every summer that like between school and stuff like that, I would always go back to Yucca Valley and I would visit. And Beau lived 2 doors down from my grandparents. So we hung out all the time. I've known him since I was probably 5 or 6 years old. Every summer we hung out together. When I moved there permanently, we were like inseparable. We were always hanging out together. We were always going places, getting into trouble. And then when I joined the military, he wanted to follow in my footsteps. He actually, before me, wanted to join the military. Like when he was 10, he wanted to join the military, knew that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to, unfortunately, join the Marine Corps. Bless him. But which is really surprising because he lives so close to 29 Palms, and I would have thought he would have had enough experiences with the Marines that maybe he would have changed his mind, but he didn't. He wanted to be a Marine Scout sniper. And unfortunately, when he went to go through the whole process and everything, he had some like initial medical things that stopped him. And then ultimately, like when he was going to sign up, he was 17 as well. He's about 1.5 years younger than me. But he was 17 when he was going to go, and his dad was like, I can't sign for you. And then when he turned 18 and he tried going, he was recovering from some other medical thing, and it kept on not happening for him. He couldn't get in. But fast forward to 2020, he's visited me a few times out in North Carolina, and he was just reflecting on living in California and how shitty of a place it is to live. There's certainly lovely parts of California, and there's great parts, but when you like have a certain lifestyle you're trying to live, it's not the place to live. There's other states to go find to have the lifestyle he wanted. So I convinced him to move to North Carolina. So he literally flew back from North Carolina from a visit, packed up all of his things in a sedan, drove across the country to live out with me for a little bit while he was figuring out where he was going to live permanently. And during that time, he was taking photographs all across the country. He did a photo series for Heroes and Horses, which is an excellent nonprofit for they do equine therapy for people who've had severe post-traumatic stress, but they don't do equine therapy where it's like petting horses and stuff. It's you're on horseback, breaking horses out in the wild, like you're out there, and it's about like pushing yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, to go through it all. So it's an incredible nonprofit. Definitely recommend people check it out. But yeah, this right here.
There we are. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing, amazing nonprofit. And so he did a photo series for that, and basically donated the artworks to benefit that nonprofit. And he had told me about it when he finally got to North Carolina. I was talking about my experiences in the military and stuff like that, and everything I was going through. He was talking about how he just did this photo series. Then we were starting to talk about, what can we do to give back to the veteran community? Both of us wanted to do something. I knew I wanted to tell veteran stories. Beau knew he wanted to do photography, and I said, well, why don't we do a photo book, but it's telling stories about veterans? And that's what we landed on. Luckily, I had a little bit of forethought about what was coming in 2021. So this was 2020 when we were sitting at my kitchen table coming up with this idea. I knew 2021 was going to be the 20th anniversary of 9/11. It will be 20 years at war. Yes, in the media, a little bit here and there, some people were saying, oh, we're coming up to the 20 years war and stuff like that. But nobody was using the title of the 20-year war. All the way up until, we started withdrawing from Afghanistan, then people started using widely the 20-year war. So we landed on a title in October 2020. And we really just like started figuring out exactly how to go through the process and how to do this. And one of the first people I call is Tom Amenta. Like I said, him and I served in the National Guard together. Tom is one of the co-founders of Ranger Up, which was one of the first military lifestyle brands that you saw. Certainly there's 9-Line, Grunt Style, all these other ones that have kind of popped up, but Ranger Up really was, I think, probably the first, at least the first one to get at scale like they did. And they were the first ones producing content, funny content for the veteran community and stuff like that.
I think I went to a party of theirs at the Paris Hotel Casino at SHOT Show for Ranger Up with like Matt Best and Brandon Webb and homeboy with his eye. He looks like Snake Plissken from Metal Gear Solid. He's a Navy SEAL. But anyways, I just want to tell you, yeah, it's a good time. Those Ranger Up guys know how to throw on a shindig.
So I called Tom right away. He was one of the first people I called because I knew he was well connected within the veteran community. And again, I'm trying to find my way back, trying to reconnect with people. And I told him about this project, and Tom has a high BS meter, like you can imagine, working at Ranger Up. He picks ideas all the time. And so when we first start talking about it, he was like, oh, okay, here we go. And I start kind of explaining my idea for this book and stuff. He was like, oh, not another military book. And then I told him the vision that I had for this book, and especially that it was going to be a coffee table photo book. And as soon as I explained that, he was like, dude, this is the coolest thing I've heard like in a long time that somebody has pitched to me. He was like, whatever you need, you've got it. So he started, with his black book, just pulling it out, connecting me with a bunch of people. But about a month and a half, 2 months into the process, I know Tom has written quite a bit, different content for Ranger Up and stuff like that. And I basically was like, Tom, I need help writing these stories. There's so many of them. We got to get them done in such a short period of time. I was like, can you help us? It's like, can you help author these? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. So, he just basically put his head in the sand, wrapped around a computer, and punched out these stories as quick as he could. We, from cover to cover, from the idea to final copy being sent to the printer, had about 4.5 months to put this book together.
That is amazing. Having looked at the book, it's very well written. It's very well put together. Beau is a top-notch, world-class photographer. And he really is. Those photos make it. And I can't believe he did in that short of a time. So like, it's pretty amazing.
Every time I reflect on it, I can't believe it. But then again, it's funny. It's probably Tom and myself, like our just mentality, Ranger mentality. You know, it's like, got to get it done. You have a timeline. It doesn't matter. We're gonna grind it
Just
out until it's done.
do it.
Yeah, and luckily, Beau again was living with me at the time. He put his transition to his new place on hold, and it was actually a perfect scenario because again, COVID was happening. So I was fortunate enough to where my business that I was working for full time went to 100% remote. So literally, I'm sitting in my office, Beau's sitting in his room. Tom luckily didn't need to be in the same room. He's typing everything up virtually, but everything designed on that book, the entire cover, every element of that book was designed and put together by us. And it was Beau and I literally just going back and forth between our computers, coming up with ideas, ways to integrate like little things in there too, you know, like a deployment letter home, making sure that made it in there. Photography that was taken in country, integrating that into the book. You know, elements of each veteran's service. So whether they had like a service photo or they had any memorabilia or anything that we could scan or take photos of or whatever, integrating that into the book. It was all these little elements that we wanted to make sure we put together that would really encompass the story of veterans who have served in the last 20 years.
Yeah, there's Mark, there's a picture of a gentleman named David Prince. It's an example of one of Beau's photographs. If you could put that up, please.
Isn't David Prince?
No, not Eric Prince.
Oh yeah, thank you. Okay, yeah, sorry, I don't mean to confuse.
No, in no relation there. We actually asked.
That's such a cool photo because that's what that guy looked like, and you can see the smoke coming out, and you just kind of get the vibe from that. In addition to the story, do you remember his story, Dan?
Yeah, a little bit. So he obviously, you know, served in 2nd Marine Division. I was connected to him because a guy that I'm part of an organization with, Fairways for Warriors, excellent golfing nonprofit. There's a lot for veterans out there, but Fairways for Warriors is one of the few that do more than just go golfing. They like actually give back to veterans, help with different types of post-traumatic stress therapies and stuff like that have been incredibly effective. It's been crazy, but anyways, we're part of that same organization. He was actually one of the first people that I got connected with. Kenny Hagler, who's in the book. And so I was talking to him, getting his story and asking him, is there anybody else that you think I should be connected with? He's like, absolutely, you need to talk to David. Because he went through the same stuff I did, but more intense. He had a few really rough deployments, you know, saw a lot of combat, a lot of death. And he didn't transition well. He's still going through a lot of stuff for himself, but we wanted to make sure to include his story because again, this book is about transition. It's about all these people who've served in combat, who've seen combat, and what their transition has been like. We have people in this book who've had incredibly successful transitions. They had a plan getting out of the military. They knew exactly what they were going to do. All the way down to somebody like David, who had a really hard time transitioning. He's still going through his transition. He's still trying to get help. But what's inspiring about him too is that he's not going to give up trying to better himself. And he talks about that in the book. He said, there's no other choice than to get better for myself. And I think that's such a powerful thing because there's so many other people who could be in his exact same shoes that have given up, that, you know, do get that hopeless, helpless feeling and then ultimately take their lives. And so I hope his story is something that will resonate with some people and hopefully inspire them to like keep going, even if you've got a shitty end of the stick, you know, kick some dirt on it, clean it off, and keep going.
It's a very inspiring book. There's looking at another black and white picture there. Katie Crum and Christine Schwartz. Are they sisters? Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, two sisters. Really, really incredible women. I love their photo too, because Christine makes fun of this, or sorry, Katie makes fun of this all the time. She has this like super intense look, but if you talk to
Yeah.
her, she's like one of the most bubbly people you can talk to. And she kind of like was initially apprehensive of this photo being D1 that we picked out, because you can see Christine on the right, who, you know, has much more of a mellow look on her face, and then Katie, who's still serving, she's still in the military, who has this much more intense face. So it has like this really good contrast between the two sisters. And we were like, no, we need to have this, because we want people to realize like women in the military do some badass shit too. And
Oh, yeah.
She's a lieutenant colonel, right?
yeah, and she was how I got connected to her, both of these sisters, is Katie served with General Votel, who wrote the foreword for our book. And she worked on his staff somehow, but what's incredible is she's continued her service, and now she's, I can't remember exactly what she's doing, but she's working for CENTCOM now at
Okay.
like a higher level. And she was helping out with mission planning, mission sets, stuff like that, like you know, doing strategic battlefield planning and stuff like that. Like, it's the amount of stuff that she's been exposed to is amazing and awesome to see. And then Christine on the right, she was the president of services schools. So she served as well, but she's president of services schools, which helps veterans get into like Ivy League schools, help them get their resume together, get, you know, their application together and stuff like that, but get veterans placed into higher level schools. And she
Very
is
cool.
actually married to both of them are married to somebody. Well, both of them found their husbands while they were in service. Katie's is not serving anymore, and Christine's is still serving. So it's really interesting, like they flip-flopped, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that she has very intense look on her face, Katie. She would she'd mess you up.
And
It's a great photograph.
and to the photographs really quick. Again, I can't say enough, and you know, you said it about Beau's photography, but one of the things that I was exposed to really early, that it scared the living shit out of me, honestly, was Beau's photography style. He shoots everything on film. So anybody who knows anything about photography, obviously, you know, digital photography, super easy. You just click a bunch of shots, as many really as you want to, and then you can pick the best one. With film, you really have to know what you're capturing. You have to look through, you know, through the eyesight to see exactly what you're going to take a picture of. And then even then, you don't know if it's going to be perfect. And when he was taking photos, he doesn't do these portraits where it's in a studio, it's set up, it's nice lighting, it's like perfect how you want it and everything. It's like, all right, yeah, like well, first thing is we told the veterans we wanted them to be where they're comfortable, wherever they want to be. So if you're comfortable at your house, we'll take it there. If you're comfortable at your church, if you're comfortable, you know, on a golf course, wherever you want to be, on a gun range, it doesn't matter. We want to take the photo wherever you want to take it. But the second thing was that Beau was like, I don't set you up. We take it when the timing's right. So he would like be in transition, and David Prince is a perfect example. Is he just saw the right moment to take that photo, and he took it. And he didn't take 10, 20 photos of each of these veterans. He would take 2, maybe sometimes 3. And the fact that he was able to capture all these photos, and at the detail that he was able to, and with the crispness that he got him, like it still blows me away. And one really quick funny story. We were going to take a photo of somebody here local. I'm not going to give away who it is in the book. But we were going to take a photo, and we needed exactly 3 pictures. Because just the way that we had it, we needed 3 pictures, because we were actually meeting with 2 people. I was like, we need 3 pictures. He's like, okay. And we're on our way there. And the day prior, he was supposed to go get more film. And I asked him while we were driving there, I was like, hey, were you able to go get that film? And he was like, no.
Oh,
I was like,
no.
all right, well, how much do you have in your camera right now? He's like, I have
12.
three shots.
Yeah.
I was like, you have got to be kidding me. So it
He's
was
like, I'm
funny.
that good.
Yeah,
It was
that's all I
funny
need.
because we even talked about how we wanted to get a fourth shot
Of course.
for like our social media behind the scenes, something that we were doing. And he took the 3 film photos, and I was like, dude, I guess I'm going to use my phone camera, but we're not going to, like, we can't tell them that that's why we're using my phone camera to take this 4th photo. And so we did. And yeah, but Beau's good. He's impressed me more and more.
And they're all like that too. It's not just some of them standard. It's like each photograph. We have another one of John Jackson. I believe
Yeah.
that's the last portrait we have from the book. If you could put that up, please, Mark. That's another.
Yeah.
You just get a sense of who he is looking at that.
Yeah. He's also a former Ranger. He's got a really cool story. I want to say he came from 1st Ranger Battalion. I could be wrong about that, but he when he was serving, he knew he was going to get out. He had a really rough deployment. And one of his friends that he connected really well with was Lieutenant Kyle Comfort, who also served in Ranger Regiment. And when he was getting out, he knew he wanted to start something to help. Well, he wanted to start something for him. He wanted to do homesteading. But as he was doing it, he was inviting some of his veteran friends out to like help with, the chickens and stuff like that. He realized that veterans were getting a lot of really therapeutic experiences from that. And so he basically was like, well, maybe I just need to form this into something. And so a lot of people think that Comfort Farms, the name of it is Comfort Farms because it's a place for refuge for veterans to come in and feel comfortable and things like that, but it's not. It's because of that First Lieutenant Kyle Comfort. So he named it after him, and they do incredible work. His farm is massive now, and that's where this photo was taken. You could see, not very clearly, it has a really good depth of view of his camera and how he took the shot, get so much detail in it, but he's burning some logs or something in the background.
I was going to say that looks like
chickens.
smoke. Yeah.
So yeah, it's he's, like I said, got an incredible story. And he's doing amazing work still.
That is just such an incredible picture too. It's the detail, the level of detail on his face in the background that's blurred really stands out.
Yeah.
And in addition to the book, you've taken this, I guess, on the road, would you say, to the National Veterans Memorial? Could you tell us a little bit about the exhibit? We have pictures of that too, and that's really impressive.
Yeah. So the one of the first places that Tom connected me to was to Colonel Bill Butler, retired Colonel Bill Butler. He is the chief of staff at the National.
Oh, that's
Veterans
cool.
Memorial. Yeah.
All those photographs all on display, huh? That's the whole book. That's all your. Those are all the photos.
That museum, if anybody ever finds a reason to go to Columbus, Ohio, like honestly, I say any veteran should find a reason to go to Columbus, Ohio. They need to find a reason to travel through there for whatever reason. Travel through there and visit this museum because it is the only National Veterans Museum. There are state veterans museums. There are museums that are dedicated to different branches of the military. This is the only National Veterans Museum. And it's got amazing architecture. It's got an amazing backstory. John Glenn, the late John Glenn, helped basically raise the funds to be able to build this facility. It's a remarkable place to just go walk through. Like I said, just the architecture alone it's beautiful. But that part of it where you walk into this gallery space kind of wraps around. You can see, like, you come down the stairs and you kind of wrap into the gallery and you get to see all the portraits and everything. So you get to spend the time to really take in all these photographs and read a little bit about their stories. And then there was a QR code that would take you to a virtual exhibition as well. but Colonel Bill Butler, when I got connected with him, he's actually in the book as well. But we visited the museum on one of the trips that we had to go visit a bunch of other veterans to get their stories. And while we were there was like, we were talking about this book, how we're putting it together. And then even while we were just talking about putting this together, there was a brief mention of, this would make an excellent exhibition one day. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't disagree. This would absolutely make a great exhibition, especially in the National Veterans Memorial Museum. So, a little bug in their ear, January, February 2021. We eventually talked to them some more and committed to doing our book launch there on September 11th of 2021. So on the 20th anniversary of 9/11. We launched our book there, and probably a month or two prior to that, we finally also convinced them that this needs to be an exhibition there. So we kind of forced their hand a little bit, but they were excited about it as well. But we forced their hand a little bit by saying, well, we're coming to your museum to launch this book. It would be great simultaneously if we could announce that this exhibition will be here, in the future. So we did. We launched our book, and then at the end of the discussion and everything for launching the book, we were like, we're also excited to announce that we're going to turn this into an exhibition, and it'll be here at the museum. So that launched. Yeah, I mean, this picture doesn't do.
Yeah, it's gnarly.
It's an amazing place.
Yeah, no, it's what an honor for you to have your stuff displayed there, and for because everybody going there is going to be,
look at that.
having some type of somber moment, I feel.
Yep. So we launched the exhibition there. It was there for about 6 months, but it is packed up on the road again. However, I am excited to announce, and I think this is the first place I'm announcing it, that we did find a new home, and it will be opened again on May 30th at the Grunt Style headquarters in San Antonio, Texas. So if anybody is in San Antonio, Texas area, you'll be able to go check it out. It's open to the public. Their headquarters is there. They have a front retail space, but they have this awesome back area, which is where the exhibition is going to be set up at. And they're also going to be carrying some of our books there. I think June 22nd is when we're having an official launch event there, but starting May 30th, people can actually start walking through the space. So
That's
really
awesome
about it. Yeah.
Yep, that's great. San Antonio.
That's a very popular area too. Very military. Very many boot camps are there, and military bases are there, and so you should get a lot of people coming in to check it out when they should go check it out. Go check it out. It looks awesome.
Yeah,
Big military town.
Oh yeah, and I love photography and film photography. I used to develop it in a previous life, so it's like when you say if you know anything about film, it's like yeah.
That's funny. I did as well. When I was in high school, I got a 35mm camera, taught myself to develop black and white. Yeah, so I can appreciate the art that goes into that, and to just have 3 shots. It's like going into a firefight. You have 3 rounds. So
it's serious.
It all count. Yeah.
Taking a picture today is so crazy because you can just like take your phone. Everybody's a production company, just digitally, just shutter speed. But yeah, if you gotta know the light, you got to know your aperture, you got to know your f-stops, you got to know what you're doing to capture that and to get those faces of those 2 ladies, or the dude with the wood burning in the background. Just when you zoomed in on it, you can still see it's such a good picture.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Just really good. Yeah. Awesome.
That'll make a perfect segue to there's a selfie mark of Dan in Ukraine. So we'll fast forward. That's
Ukraine, bro.
Yeah, actually, it's marked image 3378, and
this is prior, right?
So what are you doing there, man?
So this is a crazy time. How all this kind of converges all at the same time. So when we released the book, The 20-Year War, as you can imagine, all the media is talking about the 20-year war, the 20-year war, the 20-year war. Everything in the media was about that because of the withdrawal from Afghanistan and the utter failures there, which could be a whole nother topic for another day. But they were looking for, media across the board was looking for a veteran's perspective. And of course, we're veterans, me and Tom. We just wrote a book titled The 20-Year War. So we're getting called and pulled into every national media you could possibly think of. And so we just became these, I don't know, talking heads, people who are just giving our perspective of, what's going on in Afghanistan, agree, disagree, stuff like that. We did our best. I'm really proud of all of it because, as you know, veterans like largely stepped up trying to get people out of Afghanistan. And through that network, we were able to basically tell the story of what's happening on the ground and tell a lot of the American people of like why we're doing this, why this is so important, why these certain organizations are going in and like who needs the help and who needs to have visibility on it and everything. And so through all that, we're in the media. Then we know, Ukraine starts getting hot towards the end of 2021. And so
2012. Let's go back to 2012. No, I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, yeah, we could go back.
When was it getting hot? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, true.
Jeez.
Actually, no, yeah, this was end of 2021. So we're getting pulled in again. 20-year war is kind of overdone with, but now they're talking about Ukraine. Well, they start pulling us back in because we're on their list, roster of veterans that are, I guess, good on the media or whatever. And so we're the talking heads again, talking about veterans and just military stuff. And then we started looking into it more and more. Tom and I kind of were talking to each other for a brief minute, and we were like, they probably are going to need a lot of help. And as veterans, we could probably help in ways that our government we know is not going to do so, the same way that we did in Afghanistan. And so we kind of just were spitballing different ways to help. And one of them was, going over there training, getting people prepared, and not prepared like working with the Ukrainian armed forces because they have their own training and things like that. But we knew people were going to get civilians, military age males were going to get activated. We're going to get called to service, and they don't have the same sort of gun rights and freedoms that we have here in the US. So I knew probably 95% of that military age male population hasn't even touched a gun in their life. And yet they're going to get activated and have to go to war immediately. Like there's a way that
now they have guns, right?
They have the guns, but they don't have the training. And that's the problem. And that's what ultimately I ended up in Ukraine doing is it was about a month and a half after the invasion. What's interesting about this, it was during the exhibition unveil in March, just after that. The invasion into Ukraine happened, was that February 24th?
Yes, that's a date. Yes.
Yeah, March 11th, we had the exhibition unveil. So we had already known that happened. I was even talking to Bill Butler about it, about, going over there and training. And then we just were talking about it, whatever. And I finally get connected with an organization that I was connected through personally. I knew somebody who was over there doing it just as an individual volunteer. So I went over there to help that organization out. And it was really just a group of civilians, men who were working on being prepared for when their time comes. Because most military age men were not allowed to leave the country. I think it was under 60 years old or 55 years old, something like that. We're not allowed to leave the country because at any point they could be activated. They could be called to war. And so they all had to register, they all had to be prepared. And a lot of these men were terrified. They were like, if I get called to go fight, I know I'm not going to get the proper training that I need. And then I'm eventually going to be handed a rifle and thrown to the front. I have no idea what I'm doing. And so that's why I went there. And that's why I saw the importance in what we were doing. amazing about all of it is I was truthfully inspired by the Ukrainian people. I know there's a lot that can be discussed. We could talk for hours about it, about how our government handles it, you know, the amount of money and armaments and stuff like that that we pumped into that country. But the thing that we're certainly absolutely missing out on is the individualized training. We're providing specialized training to, you know, Patriot missile systems, to the 155 howitzers, to like things like that. But we're not teaching people how to carry a gun, how to shoot, move, and communicate, how to do the small things that they need to do to be prepared. Even again, how to hold a rifle. And you've got these people who are going off the street, handed a rifle, handed a uniform, and within a few days, and ending up on the front line.
And we have some
You think-
pictures of you training some. If you could put a couple of those up, Mark. Training the civilians with weapons in Ukraine.
Right. And speaking of training the civilians with the weapons, you know, when Russia shot down the civilian airliners over Crimea in like 2014, 2012 era, when that was all going on, and you know, we sent over special forces to work with Ukraine, from my understanding, and they were able to kind of implement this preparedness that we're dealing with today, which is why you know, we have this resistance of Ukrainians people being so strong against the Wagner Group's conscription of just forced prisoners who also, to your point, never held a gun.
Yep.
So we have, you know, these two sides who have never held guns, if you will, conscriptions, and also, you know, forced patriotism in Ukraine to fight for their land. You know, what do you think? Do you think that that's a fair fight?
It's absolutely not. For Russia, it's a numbers game. I mean, they're going to continue to throw as many people at it as they can. But one thing that I was always, you know, what I learned really honestly in Ranger Regiment and continue to use every day is the why will always outpower the how. And the Ukrainians have a much stronger why than Russia could ever throw as much how. So like much firepower and everything that they could throw at it, Ukrainians are not going to give up. They have their why. They want to keep their land. They want to have sovereignty of their borders. They want to have the freedoms that they had.
Right.
You know,
they agreed to the nuclear prolific, giving up their nuclear arms in the 90s to have this agreement where they were promised, we will never attack you by Russia.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's
Exactly.
like all out the window.
Exactly. Really one quick caveat, because I got to say this to make sure that I'm a little bit protected. But those photos, all of those are airsoft weapons. Again, Ukrainians don't have access to guns unless you're.
I thought I saw a high cap magazine on that AK, buddy.
So we had to have some way to train them. Again, like
zoom into that, Mark.
Actually, over here on the left, that thing.
Look at that PPSH.
That thing, yeah. So that thing came out of a museum. So it's a relic that's been completely decommissioned, but they didn't have anything. That other one is a airsoft AK. Yep. And then that AK on the right is also a decommission from the Soviet era, the one I'm holding. So again, I didn't use any live weapon systems with them at all. This is
Are these photos here all airsoft as well?
Yep. Yeah.
And so are those knee pads, and so are those uniforms, and so are those boots, and so is that phone booth and all those trees. Let's get a game on. Let's go.
Yep.
That's my forte, baby.
You know, I will say it's a very effective tool to teach the basics, but honestly, nothing will replace like being able to do an actual live fire. Obviously,
Of course not. Of course not.
But,
pointing a gun at another human being and pulling a trigger is desensitization that you can't get unless you use airsoft for war games. But nothing will ever replace the smell, the fear of pulling a trigger.
Yeah.
I always think a real gun is loaded. I handle an airsoft gun and I always handle a real gun. It's like I could disassemble it and look at it 30 different times and still think, are you loaded?
Yep. Every time.
Every time. So it should, and as long as you're using it that way, I think that's a very viable thing. And that, hey man, that's awesome that you're using airsoft over there. I love that. I love it.
And we could tell that you're teaching a good trigger discipline too. I noticed that they had their finger like not
Yeah,
in the
right.
trigger.
Oh, you bless them. I mean, I'll say Ukrainians were way easier to teach than Afghans. I'll just say that like outright. It was way easier to teach them. And because I had to work through an interpreter both times. You know, I've trained Afghans, I've trained Ukrainians now, and it was just much easier. Just different, I don't know, different levels of communication, I guess.
Well, did you feel the threat level with Afghanistan as much as with Ukrainians? Like, you know, where there could have been more thoughts about insurgency among your ranks, you know, like within the Afghan war versus the Ukrainian? Do you think there's more Russians that are embedded with Afghans, like there are Afghans with Afghans? You feel me?
Yeah. It was definitely a risk that we talked about all the time, because the time that I was there was also around the time when there were reports of Russians, what do they call them?
Infiltrating?
Like infiltrating, basically being able to get into like the International Legion and stuff like that. Like there were reports of stuff like, you know, things like that happening, internal spies, even neighbors, you know, in certain parts of the country and stuff like that, being able to report to the Russians and all this stuff. And so there was absolutely a risk, and I feel plenty safe enough saying this now. But at the time also was when we gave the 155 howitzers to Ukraine. And where we trained was within earshot of where the Ukrainians were training with the 155 howitzers. And I was like, I mean, you know that place is going to get targeted if it's possible for Russia. And I was like, that's close enough to me that I don't feel super comfortable.
Right. And then you realize that, hey, I'm an American. Yeah, I might be a target here. Providing them with weapons they're going to be used to kill Russians. We're about the 1 hour mark. Is there anybody out there that has, there we go. Any questions of Dan from any of our viewers? Don't be shy.
I do have one more thing to say if we're, oh, sorry, if somebody about to say something.
Oh, no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I guess we don't, so go ahead.
Yeah, just really quick. So we did that training in Ukraine, and I got connected with a bunch of other veterans that did similar training or did the same training, and we've been working over the last year to go about it the right way, to make sure that we're going through this Department of State and set up everything properly, get DDTC registered, have ITAR compliance, all that nuts and bolts that you're supposed to do, that a lot of other organizations were not doing and have gotten in trouble for. I'm sure you guys have heard about it, the Mozart group getting in trouble significantly, all that. So we mitigated a lot of that risk, but we just launched our own 501c3 to support training in Ukraine, that will have DDTC registration, the proper licensing and everything. And it's called Citizens to Soldiers. And it's perfect title to exactly what we're doing, is like training citizens to prepare them to be soldiers. And so we've been doing that. We're you know, in the early rounds, obviously, of trying to fundraise and get that thing off the ground, make sure we're doing everything properly. We've got the connections in Ukraine, we've got the veterans who want to do the training. Obviously it's just a matter of getting the support to do so. But I've been super proud to get that thing going, because it's been a lot to work through lawyers and everything to, again, make sure we're doing it the right way, that we have the correct legal protections, that we've got the right safeties in place for volunteers, all that kind of stuff. But really excited to get that thing off the ground.
That's awesome. You're a busy guy.
Yeah.
So where do you see the war? If you had a crystal ball, where do you see the war going from here? Because I know Zelensky is asking for fighter jets again, and they just,
how about Russia just goes home?
They want bigger, faster, more powerful weapon. That would be nice. Yeah.
Just bug out. Yeah, just get out. If
leave.
anyone on Russia is listening, on Team Russia, just quit right now. Just give up.
So if you want my honest take for the immediate future, it's going to be a grind. Nothing's going to happen immediately. I don't think Russia is going to drop their arms and go home. Ukraine's not going to give up the fight. They're going to continue to ask for more and more. I would too if I was in their shoes. Like, if you don't ask, you're never going to get it. So of course you're going to keep asking for more and more. I'm happy to see that some of the NATO nations are stepping in, trying to help with some of the training, but the way they're doing it is taking Ukrainian individuals out of the country to train them, to bring them back in. And that's just not going to be a winning methodology for that. They need to conduct training in the country to make it more expedient. But the fight's going to grind for a while, for a long time. I think Russia's going to continue to get weapons through all their partner nations, everybody they're trying to beg, borrow, and plead with. Unfortunately, we're not going to shut off the tap to Russia entirely. We're going to continue to funnel money into their petroleum business. So they're going to continue to fund the war machine. This is going to extend for, I don't know. Unfortunately, I personally see it extending for a few years, at least, unless somebody, I don't know, unless Putin somehow croaks and dies, and then there's a internal battle for power. I just don't see Putin backing down at all.
I bet he's
Yeah,
so
either-
paranoid about
either do
drinking
I.
his own water, bro. That's what I think.
And we do have a picture of Putin there. If you could show that, Mark, was taking in from Ukraine, I would guess.
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
bro.
That's
because he's just
interesting.
bleeding out his troops. It was such good symbology there.
Mhm.
They had a ton of photos. This is another thing about Ukraine that was super weird to me. Granted, it's a country at war. It's been at war technically for 8 years now, 9 years, since 2014, really.
Yeah.
And all throughout the country, you see national pride, absolutely, but this crazy pride for their armed forces, and then also this like symbolic resentment for what Russia is doing to Ukraine. And it's all throughout. Like, this is just one example, but I have countless other photos of basically billboards and posters and stuff like that I just took photos of while I'm walking through the cities, and it's just crazy. But again, no surprise. It's just, this wouldn't last in America. Like, somebody would put this poster up and somebody would complain about it and take it down. Like, this wouldn't last in America. I guess maybe if our borders were being invaded, maybe it would,
But as long
Yeah.
as we fight it over there, they hopefully won't be here.
exactly.
Yes. Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, our time for this evening's pretty much up. Thank you, Dan, for being our guest. Thanks, Brad.
Sorry for trickling a little late,
what-
but always
that's
worth
cool.
it. I
What
appreciate
happened to,
it.
What happened to your squirrel? The squirrel's gone.
I tried to get professional while we were talking, and I thought the squirrel, I actually should have kept it, but
It was a little distracting, but kind of cool.
yeah,
It's
I just
one-
wanted you to realize, Dan, I respect you and I appreciated you, and I didn't know what the squirrel was, and that's just how it goes, dude. Last time I joined this, it said SOFREP behind me, and I thought it was just going to pop up with whatever. So, thanks to Guy for putting it together. Honestly,
It's all good.
You're
I
welcome.
have if it'll make you feel better. My first tattoo, barely 18 years old, is a squirrel holding an M4. So
oh, that's some super secret squirrel
Yes.
shit right there.
Fun
You're like, what are you doing,
facts.
Rad? Someone told you about the squirrel, didn't they? Huh? Didn't they? Yeah, let's go with that. Let's go with that.
Your kids are going to ask you about that someday, and you're going to have a good story.
yeah.
Dad, why do you have a squirrel with a gun?
Yep.
The fact that you can see it. He didn't say where it was. Where's your tat at? Where's that at? Oh man, geez. Oh, Ukraine,
yeah.
the world.
Yeah.
Come on.
Unfortunately, I don't see it ending anytime
Yeah.
soon either. So that's
Not if you're using
unfortunate.
airsoft. Although, listen, in my world of airsoft, which I deal with all the time, if only we did fight that way, it's like, oh, well, you hit me today, I'll see you tomorrow on the battlefield. Okay. It's just a constant respawn game. Okay. But there's no respawns where you guys are at. That's for real. And I think those people in Ukraine have a unity together, which is why those propaganda pieces of photos makes sense to them because they all agree, like they're
Yeah.
putting that Z on all of those tanks and all that stuff, trying to like enforce this letter of, you're going to abide. And they're like, no. And honestly, not to keep it going a little longer, but Putin tried to just roll in and think like they're just going to be like, hey, thanks for rolling in.
Yeah.
And that's not what they wanted at all. They wanted to like say, hey, dude, when I watched it first kick off, and there was like this band, there was a band, right? I'm into music, and there's a band that has a lot of like fans, like they're dying fighting in the trenches. They're a band. They're supposed to be playing music together and entertaining the friends and those that love music, but no, they're picking up arms and taking it to TikTok and trying to say, hey, we're the band, but now all of a sudden there's rockets coming at them.
Yeah.
It's like,
I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, it's true. And that's a lot. I mean, that's why I try to jokingly say, if Russia's listening, just put down your guns, man, and just go home, because everybody else would.
Yeah. I mean, they're already home. That's the problem. Russia,
right.
you
Just
couldn't let them go home.
Yeah. And I want to see that Wagner guy cry more on media, dude, and like look more sucked in on his skull with loss of sleep at night.
Yeah.
Say it how it is. Oh man, alive. No, you're great. You're great. Oh, I gotta ask you. I ask all my Rangers, what's the best regiment?
Second, of course, where the mother went.
Just making sure. You're talking about someone in the first, someone in the third. I'm just asking.
Yeah, we've got a 1st Battalion guy here as a writer. So
Oh yeah.
They're okay too.
yeah, they're all right.
Yeah.
There's a Ranger that lives out here named Vincent Rocco Vargas.
he's
Vincent
in the book.
Vargas.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, he lives right. He's my neighbor. Really, I mean, kind of.
I was gonna go throw a rock at him for me.
I don't know if I can read. He's across the valley, though. He's that kind of neighbor. He's over there through my wall, my blurred chimney.
That's right. You're in Utah, so neighbors can be like a mile or two away.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we all live
Next
along
door.
the mountain front here. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jason
I-15.
Van Camp also lives in just outside of Salt Lake. But
Now I actually am great friends with Jason. Do stuff with Mission 60,
Yeah.
Warrior Rising.
Yeah.
He's been on my show on SOFREP like 2 times talking about Mount Kilimanjaro, and
Yep, he's in the book.
yeah, well, oh yeah, dude, West Point. Yeah, that's okay. Green Beret, what more? I'm not blown away by Green Berets, but playing for West Point. Jason Van Camp. There you go, bro. Mission 60.
Yeah.
Getting a plug on the show tonight, brother.
Everybody
Jeff
who's anybody's
Kirkham.
in that book.
Oh yeah, they're all out. We're all out here, buddy. Are you not in Utah?
No, North Carolina.
That's
So.
where spec ops go to retire.
I know. Either that or Colorado.
We got the snow. They got the weed. Oh,
and with that,
perfect.
to thank all of our loyal SOFREP readers, viewers, buy the book. Look, there's Tim Kennedy. That's enough reason right there.
Yeah.
You have Tim's story in there.
Man, you should see him some Levi's. Him walking through the Levi. He fills those Levi's out, man. He's got some legs.
He's a big dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still have to get me a copy of the book, so that's on my to-do list. Available just about everywhere. We were talking about that before through Amazon. We'll have to get hooked up through our SOFREP book club.
Yeah, exactly. The book club.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely do.
Have to get you in there as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. Whatever I can do to support it, for sure.
Okay, we'll talk about that offline. So, Dan Blakely.
Well, thanks again for having me on the show tonight, Guy.
Thanks for being here. Same time next month, and I suppose that's it. Out for now, everyone. Have a good night. Peace.
Thanks.
Peace.
Thanks.